Tony, thanks for joining.
My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you. I was hoping we could just talk about maybe start with your early life as an artist and your beginnings as an artist in New York.
Okay, well, I was born in New York and I went to Pratt. And I think it was in the end of my second year at Pratt. I was at the cafeteria with a friend of mine, and he was bitching that he had no money. And I said, well, get a job. Oh, I don't have a job, blah, 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 blah. So we passed the bulletin board, and I see a little tag on there that says restaurant job. So I take it off the bulletin board. It says it's in SOHO. So I thought, cool, here, look, great. Try this, Charlie. Oh, no, man, I don't want to go into Manhattan, man. I'm in Brooklyn. It's a pain in the neck. I said, well, okay. So I took it and I called them. And what it was a job in a restaurant that Gordon Matta Clark, the sculptor, had started.
Was it
And
food?
until that time, there was only Finelli's, the bar. But this very quickly became a gathering point for all the artists in Soho. And so I got a job there as a sous chef. And in 2 weeks, 2 weeks after I had that job, I had met basically the art world because it was concentrated at the time still in that small neighborhood. And the famous and the unfamous mingled freely. And it was an opportunity that I don't think exists anymore in New York. I mean, when I realized where I was and who was there, celebrities, they weren't rich yet, but everyone knew who they were going to be.
Who were they?
I, well, people like Richard Serra and Philip Glass, everyone,
Yeah. Wow.
everyone hung out there. Not everyone, but it was and the older artists were very nice to people. They were very nice to me. I got invited to do all kinds of things. By a month or two went by, and I was being invited to show in group shows at, the 112 Green Street Gallery, which was a hot shit gallery. It was a place where very well known artists showed alongside of lesser known people. So I was so happy because up until then, I really came out of this middle class neighborhood in Brooklyn, and nobody went to art school. Nobody thought about becoming an artist. It was like nobody, nothing in school. I just had always really liked drawing, and I got into law school because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. I didn't really have the nerve yet to say I'm going to be an artist. So I took the law boards, which are, by the way, very simple, not hard to get into law school if you have control of your language skills. So I was all set to go. And I had a little talk with myself. And I said, I don't think I want to put on a suit every day and, discuss other people's problems. And I just decided I was going to go to art school.
You always liked drawing as a kid and stuff.
I used to make flip book movies. I started doing that. I guess on TV, I saw somebody do it, probably Walt Disney. That have, if you showed the flip them, you could make a moving picture. So I remember doing a real big one of cavemen swinging on mines and blah blah blah. My mother was very impressed, and I thought, this is fun. I like doing this, and I started reading about art and took an interest from then on. But it wasn't until I got out of college and went to Pratt that I,
So you went to Pratt for grad school then?
yeah, but I started undergraduate because I had no undergraduate art.
So you'd gone to college and then
Yeah, I
think,
studied. I studied like uh, philosophy,
yeah.
theology, sociology, things that you can't make any money doing. And I just was interested in them. So it's like being a history major, you know.
Yeah. So then it was either law school or art school.
Yeah, in law school, like I said, I had good language skills, and I got into two law schools, good one, pretty good ones. And I could have gone, but I just, had this little talk with myself, and I couldn't imagine, putting on a suit. My dad was a doctor, and he worked every day. I, barely saw him growing up. It was like typical early 60s, still father knows best kind of world, late 50s almost. And I knew I didn't want to do that. So I went for my passion. And
Yeah.
as soon as I did that, stuff started to happen.
So you're at Pratt, and then you get the job at Gordon Motley Clark's food restaurant, right?
Right.
Amazing. And then you're meeting all these people in New York, and so you're connecting with the New York art world at that point.
Yeah, the chef with whom I worked, uh, her name is Joanne Akalaitis, was a member of Mabu Mines, which was a very big downtown theater. And so I hooked up with them, and I made some props for them, and I wound up doing some performing with them. And then I met Robert Wilson. I was a very big force in downtown theater as well. And I performed with Robert Wilson as well. So I kind of got a start in my first real artworks. I mean, I was showing some sculpture, but also I was doing performance art. I'd been invited by a man named Jean Dupuy, an older artist, who used to round up like 25 people and have everybody do 5 minutes, a 5 minute performance. And he did a very famous one initially called Soup and Tart, where he baked apple tarts for like 100 people and made, I don't know, 10 gallons of soup. And, people like Gordon Matta and Philip Glass and Dickie Landry, who was in his group. Well, actually, I don't think Philip was performed, but a lot of people performed who were not regularly performing. But I really liked it. And after I finished my little 5 minutes, Richard Serra came over to me and said, "Great piece, man." And I was like, "Holy fuck," I was like, I was hooked. And Jean Dupuy went on to do lots of these kind of events, performance events, and I did several of them. And I met a lot of people. I mean, I performed alongside of Laurie Anderson and just a lot of other people.
So you're really at the center at that time of,
It was a small
yeah,
community,
yeah.
and I had it in because I got to know people, and people liked me, and they gave me an opportunity. I mean, Robert Wilson had this thing. He had a loft, and people would go there I think it was Thursday night, and they'd just smoke weed and dance, do crazy dancing, and blah blah blah. And one night he said, I'm doing this piece, and I know you did a little bit of work with Mabu Mines, so I'd like you to be in it. I said, great. What do I do? So he was doing this 12-hour performance at Brooklyn Academy called The Life and Times of Joseph Stalin. And I was in the first act. And he said, we have 50 people dressed up in a uniform, and you're going to lead them a dance across the stage. So I thought, am I? I've never been on a stage. He said, you can do it. And I thought, yeah, I can do it. And I did. And then I didn't have any other work in the piece till the last act, like 12 hours later. I came out on stage alone, dressed as Wilhelm Reich. And he had this rock on the stage. He said, make up a little song and sing a song to the rock. So, okay, you know, I come out, I make up this little song. Oh, I forget how it goes, energy in the rock, blah, blah, blah. And then I had to mime being grabbed by the arms and pulled off backwards off stage. In between, we did nothing but smoke weed backstage and go to Juniors with the munchies. I don't know if you know Brooklyn at all, but Juniors was the only thing open near Brooklyn Academy at the time at
It's
night.
still there.
It's open was open all night.
Did they have that cheesecake back then?
They had the cheesecake, they
Yeah.
still do. So it was a great time. It was a lot of fun, and I wound up doing a lot of good group shows and getting my name out there. I had my 15 minutes, so to speak. It was a 10-year, 12, 15 years of being invited into stuff.
So were you painting at that time or just doing
I
performance?
transitioned from painting to sculpture. I mean, from sculpture and painting to more painting and more painting and less sculpture and less sculpture as I went on. And I always had this interest in imagery, and that came out of the performance art, I guess, and maybe my little flip books. But for a long time, my work was figurative, but I had some conceptual bullshit, that would motivate it, or that was a pretext for painting figuratively. Because I didn't want to be an academic painter. It didn't interest me at all.
Would you say
And
there was a lot of pressure to paint in a certain way in those days?
no, people, were like Borofsky and people like that were breaking down those doors pretty well. But I didn't want to be, an expressionist painter, paint figuratively but sloppily. I just had no interest in that. But at the same time, I was sort of intimidated because knew I would never be, able to paint like my heroes, like Picasso or somebody. I just never had those chops and never had enough schooling to get there. It started too late. And so I had devices to originate my figurative painting. One of them was I would make a line drawing, say, of a cow, just a line drawing. And then on the same canvas, make a line drawing of a horse. And then all those, one would lay over the other and create a kind of tangled grid, and a very irregular grid of spaces that were made by one drawing over the other. The one line drawing laid over the other. Am I making that clear?
Yes. So basically almost not quite a collage, not quite a could you decipher what they were, what the shapes were?
Well, I would paint then in the spaces created by the intersection
Mm,
of the lines
yes.
so that you could flip back and forth between
Right.
the two. Or if you got really good, you might see both.
So this is sort of like a duck rabbit situation kind of.
Yeah, I mean, it could be any two images, but I made a kind of meta space by having two different images and manipulating the color and values so that you'd start looking at the cow, but then you find yourself looking at the horse. And then, you know, you could move around in the space that way.
And were you making these paintings when you were sort of coming up in New York?
Well, no, that was the latest iteration before I finally said, fuck it, and just painted what I wanted to paint, whatever the image came into my head.
I like
And
that
that
a lot.
happened by
Yeah.
accident, actually. The trigger was that the studio I'm in is on a floor of a Treasure Island Cube Smart building.
I know the building.
And there's a whole floor with like 100 studios, and three of them were wood shops. And so they would always throw out these incredible looking carved pieces, offcuts of wood, and people would throw away things like, I don't know, computers, whatever. So I started one day I picked up a water bottle in my studio, which I always bought a bottle of water. And I don't know what made me do it, just boredom or wanting to do something with the damn water bottle other than throw it out. And I cut up the plastic and I made a sort of plant. I made a plant out of it. And then I had some acrylic paint. I was painting oil, but I had some acrylic paint. So I took the acrylic paint, plastic on plastic, and painted the plant, and it came out great. So I started making these little sculptures with the found stuff that was being thrown out. And then one day somebody threw away 10 little plywood panels, nice finished, birch plywood on one side, and they were 10 inches square. So it freed me. I didn't have to spend, a lot of money on it. And I just made an impulse painting real quick. And I really enjoyed it. Very liberating. And so I did a couple more and I started painting the images that would occur to my crazed brain. And this whole thing started with narrative imagery, which is what I've been pursuing for the last 5 years.
So up until this point, you were sort of holding back from any sort of narrative or representational. It seems
I
sounds like
was rep-
you,
I was
yeah,
representational,
yeah.
but there was this underlying conceptual premise. I did away with the premise because now I'm painting, you know, doing what Velázquez did. I'm painting a picture. And that's scary. You know, it was for me because, I know what Velázquez could do. And I couldn't not do it, but I could do what I could do. And I was more drawn to, I like frescoes a lot. And so if you've seen my work, which you have, I like a shallow space. I like, I don't like deep chiaroscuro. And I like to present a narrative that's kind of ambivalent. Sometimes it's pretty clear what is going to happen, and sometimes, a lot of times, you don't know exactly what's going to happen. It's like that Alfred Hitchcock thing. He said if you have a gun in the frame, there's an implied narrative. If there's smoke coming out of the gun, more narrative is implied. If there's a handkerchief, and so I would have a basic idea like a woman turning into a cloud or something like that. And then I would make thumbnail sketches. That's just what I do. I make a thumbnail sketches, and these little ideas pop up. And then I make still not a drawing that I would really want to show, but I figure out where I want to put things in space and so on. And then I start painting, and anything can happen. Usually I adhere to the drawing pretty well because I figured it out ahead of time. But a lot of times it's like I'm making the smallest, cheapest movie in the world. I decide what happens. So if I have this stage set and there's extra character here like I have a woman, I have a tree, and then I have this idea. Suppose the woman is shooting a gun at the tree. This one actually happened. And so I have painted the woman extending her arm and a gun, shooting at the tree. And then I put down a little ice bucket and a bottle of champagne. So she's loaded and shooting a gun at the tree for amusement. And that was the narrative I left in that picture.
What's an example of maybe a conceptual impetus that you might have made in previous before this sort of more recent body of work with that have a more obvious narrative? What's something like what's a conceptual reason that you might have made it in a representational painting in the past?
Well, this business of two subjects, I'd done that for like 10 years, and I made sizable canvases, which people would admire, but nobody ever wanted to show them. So I didn't get a good start. And during that time, I had a job, I had my own little business that I started. And I made a lot of money handling very valuable art. for big galleries.
It was an art handling company.
Um, the big, it was picture framing. I would design the shows with the gallery personnel, and then I had made an arrangement with picture framers whom I knew that because I could bring in a huge amount of work, I would get below wholesale price on the frames. But the real reason, the real strength I had was they trusted me to handle and mount Picasso drawings or whoever, expensive artwork. And that for that, I charged, an hourly rate, which I tacked on to the cost of framing. And, you know, I could make a lot of money in an hour. So I worked hard, but I could cram 5 days work into 4 days because it was my company. And I got the job done. Nobody was there to tell me, you have to punch the clock and go in. And so I was always able to paint and make work and develop work. But once I had kids and a full-time job and blah, 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 it became very hard to like go to everybody's opening, schmooze with everybody, and really put the work out there all the time. So it really was, hard for me for a long time. I was just stubborn and stayed on it. And as I went on toward the end, I worked less and less and finally retired. And then I was able to paint full time and miraculously able to start getting shows and be invited. Everything you get, you're invited to. You probably know this. If you go around looking for trying to show your work to galleries, they laugh at you. You have to get invited. But there, I'm going to put in a plug for Instagram. It worked for me.
Well, I saw your work, your most recent work, which I really enjoyed at a show at Art Cake.
Oh, you went
Not,
there.
I did. It was great. It was beautiful. I love those little paintings. I can still think of the palette. I can get a sense that you're very invested in the work you're doing now.
Well, it
And
was the same kind of work. I'm still making those little 10 by 10 pictures with the same impetus.
yeah.
If I had any advice for young artists, I would say pick a small size, maybe two or three at most, and stick with those sizes. Because when you have to show it or move it or put it away, you're going to be very glad it's modular.
Yeah, I feel for sculptors who make big work,
Yeah, God bless them for having
but they have to. Like
yeah,
our mutual friend Ben Peterson, who connected us, makes big sculptures,
yeah.
and I think he makes paintings too and smaller sculptures also. But he has a lot of you got to put them somewhere, right? You got to deal with the reality, the physical reality of the
Oh,
object.
yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, oh, yeah. And I know artists who, got off to great starts and did well. And, for a while, they were selling their paintings for hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then they fell out of favor. And now they're teaching, and showing, but they don't make much money selling their work.
Yeah, the whole system is it's fickle, and I really
There's so
enjoy,
much.
isn't it? It you don't know, and I think that we put way too much emphasis on the product and in the culture. It's just we're so I mean, consciousness is so permeable. We're deeply connected to everybody around us, to the culture around us. So it's hard not to tap into that. But if you can be aware of, hey, that this what I really get a joy. I really get so much joy out of the process, and that's the important thing to focus on.
Well, I think if you're going to be in it for the long haul, you better you better need to do the work. People don't ask musicians, why do you play the piano? They love it. You know, you want to try to make a living, it's hard, you know. And even if you get success, if I had even the modest success that I had as a young to, maybe not middle age, but 37 or so. If I had that in any other profession, I would have been doing pretty well if I had been in the movies. If you make 3 or 4 movies and you're in any kind of position on the screen to be seen for a little bit, you make real money. But in art is painting, sculpture is very fickle.
Do you think painting in those days when you were coming up as a young artist was it more like being a poet?
No, I mean it's always been hard. You know, it's easier now than it ever is in some respects, and that there's so many galleries. But on the other hand, there's so many wannabe artists that it's just it's a flood of garbage with you have to look for the good stuff. Back in the day, you still had to look for the good stuff, but there wasn't so much. There must be, I don't know, 5 or 10 times more galleries now.
We're just inundated with content, aren't we?
Everybody's out there wanting to be an artist now. It's like you know
The same with music, the same with movies, with film, with any genre, it seems to be just flooded with content. And so a really important thing is how do you edit? How do you choose the things to look at? For example, do you go to a lot of contemporary art shows? What do you gravitate towards? What about museums? What kind of stuff are you looking at?
Mostly I go to museums, I go to shows of my friends, or of people, very few contemporary artists who I have such regard for that I feel obliged to see their work.
What's the last great contemporary art show, gallery show you saw that comes to mind?
I don't know, Neo Rausch, maybe.
Yeah, really nice.
Very impressed with his painting.
Yeah, same. Where would you go?
I see a lot of good painters, don't get me wrong, but along with the diaspora of we have no single place where artists gather. They're just spotted communities all over. There's no real avant-garde anymore. It's just everybody trying different things and a lot of people revisiting things that have been done. So, I mean, I saw a great show at the Brooklyn Museum, Monet. The Brooklyn Museum, it was the best show I've ever seen there because historically it hasn't been great. They've been getting better over the last couple of years. But this show had really, they must have had 25 great paintings. And, Monet, Impressionism, everyone kind of disses Impressionism as being pretty.
I think it's come
I want to
back.
tell you, if you look at these
Yeah.
pictures, this man was such a color genius that all you can do is stand there slack jawed in front of some of these pictures. If you get a chance, see the show.
I'll see. Is it still up? I'll see it.
Yeah, yeah. So,
My sister was in town last weekend and we went to the Met and just hung around the Monets for a little while. They're so fresh. It's like they could have been done yesterday.
yeah.
They're so good. They're
Um,
like they just float.
and looking at them, knowing what I know about art history, but also just looking at them, he and a couple of other people decided I'm not going to do an academic picture. The paint comes available. I can go out and paint directly from nature. I'm not going to start from scratch. And he puts this one dab at a time down kind of thing. And what happens is the beginning of abstraction, the beginning of Cézanne, the beginning of Van Gogh. You know, the part of the process is me, what I see. This is what is coming in my eye. Scientific, we were very scientific about it. But the result was very liberating of the self. And that was explored by the next generation, you know.
It's so impactful.
Yeah. It ultimately leads to people like Picasso, through Cézanne and Van Gogh. And yeah,
Really
who else was
opening.
there?
Yeah.
Some of the symbolists.
If you were to go to the Met, where would you go first?
Oh, well, I mean, I have my favorites, and my favorite stuff is, you know, they're isolated. They're different things, but the Manet paintings there, the Cezanne paintings are very good, but MoMA has better Cezanne paintings. Uh, and I like the Italian, Quattrocento stuff. I like Botticelli, for example, but there aren't any Botticellis in New York. But I go to when I go to Florence. I was there about a year and a half ago again. I'll look at those for hours. I can stare at them for hours. They're just. It's still not trying to be like a photograph. They're modeled, and all the anatomy is all figured out. But it's I don't know. I guess it comes out of the fresco painting. They're a little they're in a shallow space. The line is still very important, and it's more to my liking than sfumato.
Oh, absolutely. I would much rather take a Fra Angelico over a Caravaggio any day.
Oh man, those some of those.
Those
I know.
frescoes
I
just
mean, if I'm in front of a Caravaggio, I'm slack jawed. If I'm in front of Velasquez, I'm slack jawed. I've been to the Prado 3 times. If you get to Madrid, you go to the Prado. It's the greatest painting museum in the world. It's just incredible selection. They have like 15 of the best Titians you'll ever see. Every painting is in mint condition. The Velasquez is a huge salon room. There must be 25 pictures there. And there aren't very few other places in the country, in this country, where you can see any of them.
they have
You
an
know,
incredible Northern Renaissance collection as well. I need to make a special trip there just to see those. And I'm kind of amazed. I'm like, how did the Prado get this stuff? They have just
oh, the Spanish king. After I guess the 1400s were over and the 1500s reached a midpoint, Spain started to make a lot of money with the discovery of the Americas. And by the 1600s, you have basically the Spanish king starting to buy. He bought Titians that probably either directly right off Titian. I don't know the overlap, but maybe from the first buyers, because the pictures are all in perfect condition. And El Greco, same thing. Incredible El Greco paintings. They even have 3 of the Bosch. Um,
right, including the Garden of Earthly Delights.
yeah,
Yeah.
just wonderful museum.
There was a couple paintings I was doing this sort of series based on um, Northern Renaissance paintings, and a lot of the references were from that museum. I mean, they had, I think, three of the pieces that I was looking at, including Fra Angelico, Annunciation. They were all Annunciation paintings. One was a Fra Angelico, one was a Robert Campin, and then there was another one, I believe. But I just
So
was say again.
there were so many.
Oh, so many.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Annunciation is a great narrative painting, and you're not
truly.
sure exactly what's happening. There's a message going on. I mean, the theology will tell you, but you look at the picture, they can be quite mysterious.
Yes, that's what sort of sparked my interest. What's going on there? We know there's a message, but what is there's some ambiguity, right?
Yeah, I mean, those paintings of the saints were stories. They were narratives, and they're like one shot, one cell narrative implied. Saint Sebastian, this guy with stuck with arrows. So what happened there? Well, they knew the story. That he was supposed to renounce his faith. He didn't do it, so they kept shooting with arrows, trying to make him renounce, and he didn't. He died.
And I think there's something very powerful about that narrative, about having a painting with a narrative.
There is, yes. That was a premise for painting until the French Revolution and Impressionism.
Not that it has to be one or the other.
Technique became the subject.
Yes, and I've been really ruminating upon this, and perhaps that's it, that you've given up narrative for technique. Is that what it is?
Well, the work began to turn in on itself. All the isms started. And the work is about technique, really, for a long time. And then the last one was post minimal. And after that, everybody put their thumbs in the wrong place and said, what do we do? Well, we'll be postmodern. We'll work from other people's work, which when I was like a young painter, and that happened, I was crushed. I said, I don't want to do that. Last thing I want to do is become a mannerist painter, you know, that's mannerism, taking pictures of pictures. It's supposed to be cerebral, but
So you
I was
began to create your own narratives.
I always had the narratives when I was doing performance art. Um, I call it imaging. And in fact, I call it imaginating. I kind of coined that word to describe having an image in your head, which is some kind of a picture that has valence, that has emanates some kind of interesting quality, and making it real, making a picture of it. You know, you've imaginated it.
Where do you think they come from, these
From
images?
my unconscious mostly, or sometimes it's an observation that I'll see something. I do sculpture that made out of junk, and the sculptures all come out of the objects. But sometimes, I'll see something that triggers a response.
Hmm.
I've done a number of pictures of where I invent a sculpture or do a painting of a big sculpture in a museum setting because the gigantic spaces like at MoMA, I don't know, they kind of it tickles me as to what could you put in that space. And it's fun to make a painting of a sculpture that I would never make. I mean, I have one painting of it's like a big rock and roll haircut, pompadour and a little duck's ass back and long sideburns. And that's the sculpture. It's like this hollow shell of like a wig, but it's set up on the floor of the museum like a sculpture. It's like 15 or 20 foot tall, hollowed out pompadour greaser haircut.
So you may encounter certain images in your waking life, or maybe it's a subconscious, or maybe it's a stream of consciousness.
Yeah, it could be anything. And so things combine in my head. Sometimes I started one picture. It was a picture of a ship, and I knew it. I wanted it. Some reason I like to picture things floating in the air. I don't know why. I like it, and I like things that evaporate or become smoky, cloudy. And so I painted this boat floating in the air, and then it's like a sailing ship. So the masts were on it, and I was going to paint a sail, and then I just started painting a Christmas tree. So instead of a sail, the ship has a fir tree, like a Christmas tree, and it's sailing through the night sky.
It seems like there's a good bit of humor in your work. Like it's
This
fun.
some
It
of
feels
them are pretty funny.
feels
Yeah,
playful.
yeah. This playful and funny and strange. There's irony. Anything you might find in a narrative.
Would you say that the narrative itself is subconscious?
Like I said, I started a movie, the cheapest little movie in the world.
When somebody sees one of your paintings, it seems like they have the same amount of information that you have about the narrative itself.
Yeah, a lot of times I mean, I don't like sit down and try to figure out what do I want to do here. Things suggest themselves when I'm working.
Yeah.
It's like, if you're playing rock and roll and you're playing the guitar, you don't sit down and at least I'm not the kind of musician who can sit down and figure out what lead I want to play. No, I play along and whatever I'm playing comes out of what's being played. So it's a little like that. I mean, and every painting has something that triggers it. I had one picture that I did, and it had melting things in it. And I thought, I'll start another picture. And I started painting a head. And then I realized I wanted to paint the head as a giant popsicle. So I started making the head melt, and I painted it red. And that's the painting's called Popsicle. It's a man's face that's all running and dripping like a melting popsicle. So, like I say, I'll start with the idea of this head on a stick, but then it becomes what it becomes as I work with it, because that's the fun, you know.
You got to let it flow.
Yeah, the thing has its own life, you know. And when I first started painting, I wanted to get everything I knew and I think a lot of people are this way, everything I knew in one painting. And I never knew how to stop the goddamn thing. You know, when are you finished? Especially if you wander into non-objective painting, you know, not even abstraction from something, but non-objective. For me, I knew it wasn't for me because I could keep going on that painting all forever, you know.
What do you mean non-objective?
You know, like an abstract expressionist picture is non-objective generally.
But
Certainly the
not
later
not necessarily non-representational.
yeah, there's no figuration in it really.
Yeah,
And it's like not like a Picasso where a cubist thing where it's coming from.
I see.
Because part of the jazz of that is you see that it's a horse and also that it's this abstract compilation of flat areas of cubist space.
So completely abstract.
Completely, yeah. Like no figuration, non-objective, no object.
Gotcha.
For me, you know, it could go on forever. So I knew I didn't want to be doing that.
You needed to have some subject, some narrative, and some representation.
I wanted it to, yeah. I mean, that my brain was not about the technique of painting, paint for paint self. I got over that when I painted for about a year watercolors. I learned how paint moved, how to work with the paint and let it suggest stuff to you. And I still draw on that when I'm painting figuratively, but I don't make that the subject, you know, of what I'm doing. It's all part of me realizing the image. I started one picture with a skull, and then I put it in a desert surrounding. Then I put a snake in there. And then finally I added a backpacker, that kind of thing.
It seems like it just sort of happens, and you're responding to what you've done, and then it sort of has its own life in a sense. Would that
Well,
be accurate?
from Robert Wilson, I learned trust your image. That's what he always liked to say. This is a man, if he had an image of 50 dancers coming across the stage, he would do it. He'd spend the money and put everybody in the same costume and do all 50. He wouldn't say, well, you know, maybe I should do 30 because it's cheaper or whatever. No, trust your image, you know, and go with it all the way. And then, you know, some people, a friend of mine says, oh, Tony, when you write a song, you just start throwing things at the wall and see what sticks. I was a little insulted, but I said, you know, how else do you work? Do you think you
What?
pop the whole song is going to pop into your head? You get a little something that, you know, a couple of chord changes
Mhm.
usually, and then you hum something and, oh, yeah, that works. And, you know, that's what a practice is about. I mean, if that's what the reason why I was able to really get back on target was because I was able to retire and paint every day.
That's a really awesome thing for people to hear, I think, is that at any point you can really go into it even more fully. You know, that's the beautiful thing about visual art or any kind of art is that there's not a
Any kind
shelf
of
life.
art,
Yeah. Yeah,
you
you can
got to do it all the time
at
to
any
really.
age,
You want to get the
anywhere.
muse's attention, you got to really work at it. It's that, you know, you want to sing the blues, you know,
Yeah,
you got to
okay.
pay your dues. And a famous musician told me once, I said, you know, you have all this training in classical music. Do you really draw on that when you're working? He said, you know, you have to have a practice because sometimes you're inspired and yeah, that's great, and you get some direct juice from who knows where. But if you're not in your studio practicing, too bad for you. If you get some inspiration and you're sitting at home watching television, too bad for you. And he said a lot of the times you don't have any inspiration, but you have a practice and you go and you start working. And then when you work, ideas come. Like what I do is I get cheap printer paper and a marker, a fine point tip marker, and I just make thumbnail sketches till I'm doing rapidly until something pops up. And that stimulates a lot of stuff. And then, like, sometimes I just know that I want a sphere sitting above a desert, and I'll start with that. I just know when I have something that I can work with. And then, like I said, things happen while I work. That's the way it should be. And this brings me to something I wanted to bring up, which is what makes, this is something I thought about at length the difference between figurative and non objective. What makes me able to really admire suprematist painting and a Velasquez and recognize they're both beautiful? Because I see minimalist work that I think is shit, and some of it I know is really good. And likewise with figurative. What is it? And for me, the answer is you see the level of involvement of the artist. It's like that first caveman who drew a bison on the wall. It's magic. It felt alive. And they all said, ooh, Gugu, Gugarn made a buffalo. And they were awed by it. And, I came to art world. The concept was supposed to be the most important thing. It's total bullshit. The concept is important if it's made important by the art. And it's usually invented by writers after the art is made. The first, you know, that that's the way it should be. So
So basically, you can judge something by the level. That's really good. I'm really happy that you said that. Is I always try to picture, well, what is it about this that's so good? And I think we could also call that love. And at the risk of sounding,
absolutely love. And that's when you tap into the part of your brain that people call the muse. If you're not happy, Charlie Bukowski, the writer, who was a famous alcoholic, someone asked him why he drank. He said, if I'm not amused, if I'm not entertained, they won't be entertained. If you're not fully involved with what you're making, it's just not going to have that juice. It's not going to have that aura that people with an eye can see.
but anybody can sense it, right? It's
Not everybody
there.
has an eye. I will
Yeah.
tell you,
Yeah.
I worked professionally as that picture framing shit for a long time with top gallery people. You'd be surprised how many
Mm.
of them know every price, every auction, everybody who knows them, who they live with, you know. But they don't have. If you get 10 paintings, they don't know which is the best picture. They don't know which are the good pictures. They don't really have the eye. Some of them do. The really good ones do, but some of them don't. They just, maybe they have art dealers they trust, or maybe they just know who's famous and buy into a second and create a secondary market gallery. A lot of them are. Galleries like Paulo Cooper or Castelli, who literally create careers almost from scratch, and great artists emerge. They're very rare. Most of them come along and they gobble up people now from graduate when the graduate show at Yale, they'll go and buy one of everything to see which ones turn
Yeah, it's
out.
like speculative investment, basically. It's bizarre. Yeah, I think that's the
A
problem.
lot of it is that.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, thank God there are true believers, because otherwise it'd really be a soul sucking experience.
There are, and I think you're hinting at, you're saying that what different, like the things that are in common that you respond to, that this what that abstract piece and what that Velázquez and that suprematist work, it's the level of involvement. Yes, it's and that's what it is. That's it's love. And I think that really accounts for my recent interest in the Northern Renaissance because you look at like a Van Eyck and you look at a Memling and they're just so involved. There's so much care and there's so much
Oh
love
yeah,
embedded in those paintings.
or an Egyptian sculpture.
Yes.
I mean, I think that is the magic of art, and it's I made a painting of Pygmalion. You know who he is?
Yeah, he was
Fell in love with
the
sculptor.
sculpture. Yeah. Yeah.
Only my Pygmalion has a monster.
So he created a monster. Did he still fall in love with it?
Yeah, he's reaching out to like embrace this hideous fanged.
That's how Dr. Frankenstein should have treated his creation,
That's right. Oh, if
right?
they'd be given it a little love, it wouldn't have rampaged.
Yeah, yeah. That's good. That's good. I think that's what's missing. We're all hunting for something, but that's what we're really looking for.
Involvement.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I paint, because it takes me to a place like meditation where the hours go by like wham, 3 hours, 4 hours, it goes quickly. And I'm completely free of care and just enjoying myself. And I never fret about it. And then, I don't give a fuck if it sells. I don't care about anything. I'm just painting. Whee, it's like playing the piano. I got a lot out of, being a bad musician and making garage band songs. I must have recorded, I don't know, 200 of them. And I learned a lot, about being involved and being happy with art making. I learned from the performance art. I learned from my bad music. I learned from working with theater groups. I learned so much from that. Very well-known people that were great artists, and they teach you by example. And I had so much fun working with Mabu Mines and Robert Wilson. I worked with Mabu Mines. I would do anyway. I just used to hang out with them, and if they took a Tai Chi classes for a month, I was invited to join and have to take Tai Chi classes. And yeah, it was a great pleasure and an honor to work with these great artists. And even though they weren't making paintings, I learned a lot from them, and I learned a huge amount from Gordon Mata as well. Huge amount.
You said you were the sous chef at Food. That's how you met Gordon and a lot of people in the art world.
Yeah, but also I started. Gordon liked me and he invited me, asked me to help him do some projects, and so I assisted him on some projects. I was his assistant on that. Most notably, the splitting. It was he cut a house down the middle and cracked it open.
Yeah.
You seen that one?
Yeah. Yeah. And he showed
Yeah.
at 112 Green, right?
Hmm?
He showed at 112 Green, didn't he?
Oh yeah. I mean, he
Yeah.
was. Yeah, that and white columns. He had all of Holly Solomon's artists were selected really by Gordon. They were people he
That's
liked.
cool.
She knew one thing. She knew that Gordon knew what he was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. He was
He
great. I
was a
loved it.
wonderful person and was on fire. It was so much fun to just one time we just drove around the South Bronx in his car. That was the work for the day. And he found a car that was on fire. And so we documented the burning car. It could have been anything, but he was just so full of fun and joy in his work. So I learned a lot from him.
What a great opportunity.
It was a great opportunity. I was very, 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 very lucky to land in this place because, I remember the joy I had. It was the greatest joy of my life. I thought, I finally am where I want to be because I felt very like imprisoned growing, not imprisoned, but nothing happening here in Flatbush Avenue. And the end of Brooklyn, you know. We got drunk every night as teenagers. That was the only thing you could do.
It was the same for me in Indiana.
And when I landed that in that spot, I was like on top of the world.
That was it. You made it.
Well, I was affirmation because where I come from, people all if you told somebody you wanted to be an artist, they immediately thought, you just don't want to work. That was their idea of artists. You know, fuck off who wants to just like fuck around instead of taking a shit job and being unhappy. I mean, that's unfair to people, but you know, I felt very like stifled, and I didn't want that. My dad was a doctor, and like I think I mentioned, he was a workaholic. It was the last thing I wanted. I wanted to be a workaholic, but I wanted to enjoy the work. He could enjoy medicine; he loved it, but I didn't. I didn't enjoy law. I just was something I could do. You know, I didn't want to do it for a living. I could read passages and make judgments and answer questions based on what was written rather than what I thought was written. Yeah, but I didn't want to do it, you know.
Well, it seems like following your heart really has served you
The
well.
Joseph Campbell thing. You know who he is?
Say again?
Joseph Campbell.
Yes, absolutely.
You
Absolutely.
follow your bliss. This is true. You should follow your bliss. You should try to be happy if you can. You know, there are a lot of people who can't. They have to do what they have to do. And, you know, to a certain extent, I had to do what I had to do too. But I did have the opportunity to make art and the privilege to be among people who really were making art. And it's, you know, it's been a long, great trip.
Truly is a privilege to be in New York and to be having this conversation with you. I feel like I'm transported into a very formative time in the art world in New York, which has certainly reverberated to the present very strongly.
Well, if I've done that, I feel I'm happy that I was able to get that out of you somehow, because I feel I've a lot of gratitude for having been in that situation because it's different now. You know, if I go to shows in Bushwick, yeah, you know, I'm sure if I lived there, I would know the Bushwick people. Uh, I live and work in the Gowanus area, so I kind of know the Gowanus people. I was in Dumbo, but Dumbo was really there weren't too many artists in Dumbo when I lived there. They had this bullshit that it was an artist's neighborhood, but there weren't that many artists. There were some, but nothing like a community, nothing like Bushwick.
It's amazing though here there's so many art worlds in New York.
That's what I mean.
Hey, you can tap into all. I mean, I had this experience going to a show once. I think I had a friend in this show, but it was a whole different group of people that I normally wouldn't hang out with. And I walked in there thinking this was like a bizarro art world. Like people my age, but I'd never seen any of them. And I thought I knew pretty like this is when I was really on the scene, really going to all the gallery shows and really, you know,
Yeah.
seeing. And I was just like, who are these people? This is amazing. You could just go out and meet new people every night, pretty much.
Well, I mean, that's like I said, it's a blessing that there's so much more art, and it's also a damnation because you can't see it all.
Yeah.
And that, you know, in Soho was a small neighborhood. There were like four galleries. You went to Castelli Sonnabend, you went to Paula Cooper, you went to Brooke Alexander, and you had kind of covered most of it, you know, the best of it.
So they'd have like a big opening night every month or so, whenever the
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
they were always opening nice, and God bless them. They all had bars, you know, sometimes with real whiskey instead of just shit wine. And people really had a lot of fun, and, you know, you could be invited to do things. And I feel for people now. It seems I go to these openings and I don't know, this just isn't the same kind of energy.
I think occasionally you get glimmers of it, but it's
I'm
just
sure you do.
as yeah, I kind of but as we said earlier, we're just so oversaturated with content, with stuff in the
They're
world, you know.
to emerge an avant-garde again. I mean, I don't know what's avant-garde now.
Is it possible? I mean, I don't know. I don't it is original. I like wonder I have this continual debate with myself if originality is even possible now.
Well, an artist I know who I admire named Robin Winters. Uh, I was talking to him, and I like his work a lot. Significant artist. I don't know. We were talking about ideas and art, and he said, "I don't get ideas. I get urges." And I said, "Fucking right. You get the urge to do something, and you just do it." Like I told you, one day I just picked up that plastic bottle and I cut it with the scissors, and then I realized I could paint it with acrylic and the acrylic, and that's what happened. And it's like that with this picture, with the paintings now. I get an urge, I get an image, you know. And I've always responded. For example, if I buy a new brush, I just want to use that fucking brush, you know.
You have the urge to use it.
The first time you use it, it's like, ah, it's that juicy feeling, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It
And
is.
you get kind of an inspiration out of that. I mean, maybe I'm sick, but
Painting is such a beautiful, and I think anybody, I like the accessibility of painting. Not everybody's going to be Monet, of course, but if everybody is capable of picking up a brush and just and moving some painting around and just getting enjoyment out of the process of it.
you have to have a practice, and in the practice, you find your joy, what you want to paint, how you want to paint it, or what you want to paint, or whatever. You find your thing. If you don't put in the time, maybe you're lucky. But I mean, when I go to shows, the last thing that I like to see is I walk in and there are 10 or 15 paintings. They're all the same goddamn painting.
I know.
Young person had
Yeah.
just enough money to rent a studio and make these pictures, and now they're spending all their time hawking these pictures, and they basically have made one picture.
It's interesting. I kind of came to a point where I feel a lot more understanding of the place that you're at and looking at that. I'm just going to make something that I really love. I don't care. I'm not interested in selling this stuff. And I've gotten to the point where I was sort of doing that unconsciously, just like making 10 of the same style of painting, unconsciously thinking that, oh, this will be the one that you don't,
Yeah, a
I
lot of
didn't think,
people start off consciously doing that,
yeah,
but then they try to break free, and it's not so easy. They wind up
of course, it's hard.
pandering to it
Yeah,
some unconscious way, no matter
you
what
get,
they do.
you get stuck. But I
Well, it's
think
hard to get free.
yeah,
It's not a wonder that you're stuck. Everyone's stuck.
it's hard. It's hard.
You have to, you have to find what turns you on enough to make you do it, whether you get paid or not.
There's an element of something that's like you shouldn't do, kind of like some of the best paintings are things that I think they would tell you in art school, or anybody would say, don't do that. Catherine Bernhardt did these paintings, these day glow, sort of hideously painted paintings of mushrooms and Bart Simpson and the Pink Panther, brightly colored, huge, just kind of insane. Garfield and just insane, like spray painted. And these are like all the things, a lot of hot pinks, things
Mm-hmm.
I would say, no, don't ever do that. But she did, she was doing it and it's awesome. Like I think a lot of things like that are,
If it works for her enough to get the juice running,
it's
it'll
interest.
show.
Yeah, it's going back to what we were saying that it's, it's the interest, the sort of that kind of love that whatever it is. But I think there's a lot of things that there's sort of a mischievous quality that a lot of artists have, or a mischievous tendency that it's like, oh, I shouldn't do this. Oh, okay, I have to do it because this is something
People
that I
want
should do.
respect. They want to be loved. And so nothing is a bigger turn off to a woman from a man, or to a sexual partner, than a sense of desperation.
Mm-mm.
You know, if you, God forbid, have a crush on someone and you show that you're just dying to be with them, they get a little cooler.
you can tell that you're really invested in your process and you're not concerned. You're not overly concerned about how it's received, which I
Yeah,
think
I
is
think that I think that people who really are in their groove and really have found their voice emanate a kind of sureness and confidence that people call charisma. It's, they have a sense of purpose and people respond to it. If you're kind of like me, apologetic about your stuff, and you don't have to make a big deal of that, but if that's what the read is, people are not going to be interested. Or if you're desperate, God forbid. That's why I say you go to a gallery with your little portfolio under your
oh
arm.
no, no.
Oh, I feel sorry for you, man.
Oh no. I know
You're
we
gonna
used
be
to
you're gonna be crushed.
I worked at some big galleries and I remember the assistant of the owner would had stacks of stuff that people would give them. I'm sure.
I've seen it. I know what you're saying. I remember seeing an art dealer in a very important gallery, and he had and in those days it was slides. You had to shoot slides. They weren't digital, and it was an expensive thing for an artist and a lot of work. And so one day I'm in this gallery and I'm back, and you could go in the back room easily then, but there wasn't like this person to bar you from going into the back room. And I see him take this fold, like a what do you call those, ring binder,
Mm.
full of sheets of slides, and he exhales and throws them in the trash.
Oh, yeah, of course.
And I thought,
Naturally.
you fuck, that's somebody worked for a month to make that happen. You throw it away.
Yeah, I know. It's just, well,
Oh, so horrible.
but I guess we're all looking for, right? We're all looking for vindication. We're all looking for affirmation that what we're doing is good. I mean, humans
Yeah,
are
but you can't
intensely.
find that from other people.
No,
You know,
exactly. It's internal.
when you're in the
Yeah.
groove, you know it.
It's just you.
Yeah, and you feel good because you're fed.
Yeah,
Like I said, the muse likes people who are working hard.
that's right.
And you read Homer. The first line is, "Speak to me, muse, of a man who have suffered much," and he goes on to describe Ulysses, Odysseus. That's how the Odyssey starts. All of those epic poems. Speak to me, muse. And he's doing it in metered rhyme. You get that engine started. You got to pull the cord a couple of times. Like that engine started. Well, you have to have something that you like to do. That takes you to the place where you want to be.
But it gives back
Yeah,
so
it's fun
much.
to feel the creation flowing. The juice is flowing, and a great joy to be not dwelling on all the bullshit that you and then there's more bullshit all the time. The bullshit people get involved in, politics. Ugh.
I think also it has to do with what you're not consuming. When you're making art, you're not doing that stuff, right?
Right.
And you're so
Well, you're
you're
free.
yeah.
You're in the doing. You're not thinking about it. You're doing. When you're painting, I know I'm going to pick that blue up. I mean, I pick it up. I make the decision, but I don't think, what do I need here? Blue, a little black in that blue. You get into that frame of mind, you're dead. You just keep. You watch Monet paint. There's a little video of him painting, and he's got the big, huge palette on his arm, and he's smoking a cigarette, and he's just like reaching into the palette, dabbing, looking at the subject, dabbing, free as a bird, you know, just painting what he sees. And he's not even looking straight at his subject. He's turning his head, looking at the subject, and freezing it in his mind, and then blopping it down on the canvas. It's an interesting little video.
I'll have to find it.
go to the Monet show.
I will.
It'll make you happy.
I will see it. Yeah, those are just beautiful paintings. I took my mom to see the water lilies at MoMA,
Uh,
and it's just
they're vast.
it's just alive.
Well, this
Um,
show is it's about Venice,
hmm.
and so they're smaller paintings, but they're so intense and so beautiful.
I'll see it. I'll see it if you get a chance. Also, I just saw a show at the Morgan Library and Museum of medieval, I guess late medieval psalters, books of psalters, illuminated manuscripts, and it's gorgeous. It's really really beautiful. It's up till January, I think. I definitely recommend that.
To January 6th.
I think it's up till January something. Yeah.
Oh, I'll
Um,
try. There's so much to see.
very beautiful. Tony, it's been such a pleasure to talk today. But if
Great
before
pleasure talking with
it was a
you.
pleasure talking with you as well. And is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
No, just a thank you. I think it's fun to talk about art. You know,
It's important.
well, I don't know if it's important to anybody else, but it's important to me.
Exactly. Me too. Me too. Thank you so much for doing this.
Well, it was a pleasure, and we'll do it again sometime.
We'll do it again.
Adios.
Take care.